Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where today I'm going to be exploring the challenges we need to overcome as we redefine the future of work and what that looks like. So I want to explore working from anywhere, the global economy, the labour shortages, especially around tech skills, tech employment retention, when there is such a shortage of tech skills that people get snapped up by other companies, and also how to tackle the paying different salaries depending on where you live for the same job. So today I've invited Rick Hammell, founder and CEO of the recently rebranded Atlas, and he's going to join me in the discussion about all this and much more. And we do have a lot to get through. So rather than wasting any more of your time with me rambling, it's time for me to ask you to buckle up and hold on tight, because I'm going to beam your ears all the way to Chicago, Illinois, where Rick is waiting to join us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are, what you do, and maybe share your origin story and what put you on this path?
Yeah, so Rick Hammell, founder and CEO of Atlas. And it's interesting, I've got to get used to saying Atlas. We've recently gone through a rebrand from Elements Global Services. What we do is we really create opportunities for companies to expand their business and connect them to talent in 160 countries. In addition to that, what we do is allow that opportunity for talent in different countries to connect with employers where they may not have had opportunity before to actually work. With the world that's gone more remote work, companies have seen that their ability to find proper talent or even the best talent is now just a click of a button with us. Companies now can expand their businesses, and without having to have entities in any country, they're able to test that market. I like to use the example of China quite often, where China can take 18 months to set up an entity, $250,000 to actually share capital, and then also the additional registrations that can take a few extra months after that once the entity is established. Where with us, we can actually onboard an employee as soon as 2 weeks in China. So speed to market, flexibility in where they want to put talent, and also for small to mid-sized businesses, the ability to compete with larger businesses, because now they don't have to worry about that large share capital that they've had to do in the past. Now they can really say, okay, let's test the market, let's grow the market, and let's see how fast we can get there.
And there's a lot to unpack there, because as you said, Atlas does guide companies on their growth journeys with software and solutions that enable global talent management. But you also mentioned the rebrand. So I feel that there's a big story here. So can you tell me a little bit more about the story behind the company and the problems that you set out to solve with technology?
Yeah. So initially, prior to Elements at the time, now Atlas, I was a head of HR for a government contractor. And I, just like every HR person, you get the green light to start to hire people. And my remit was to hire people in Saudi Arabia, Singapore, and Japan, supporting $1 billion contract with the US government. And just like everyone else, we had to figure out how to spin up very quickly. We Googled and we were deciding to set up an entity or use a provider like this. We ended up finding a provider in those countries, and we found out that they said that they can be the employer, they can do the visas. It would be very fast and very simple for us. But what we later found out is that they were actually not the employer. They had third parties in countries. They were outsourcing our services. So, outsourcers outsourcing, and really started to impact our client and our employees. And so I went to the CEO of that company and said, look, we need to set up our own entities. This doesn't make sense. Once we did that, we transitioned the employees off that company. A number of other government contractors came to us and said, hey, we're having the same issue with that provider or other like providers. Can we use your entities to employ our employees? And that for me was my green light. That was my aha moment where I said, oh, this is a really good business model, being direct. I ended up leaving that organization 2 or 3 years later. And the first thing we did was establish our entities. We were in first 30 countries, then 50, then 85, then 100 to 135. And now we're well over 160 countries where we actually own and operate all of our entities. With that was really what was great is we actually learned how to do business in each country. We learned how to onboard and offboard employees in France. We learned how to process pensions in Brazil. We learned how to do money transfers in China. And we learned all of that experience and then built our platform on that. So we didn't initially start with the platform. We actually started very manual like everyone else did, but we ended up building our platform based on that experience and operating in each country. And then we were able to really build a end-to-end solution where we truly can actually onboard, manage, and pay employees in 160 countries, but also with the experience of actually doing business in countries. So working with clients, all the cuts and bruises that we got in the beginning when we were establishing ourselves, our clients don't have to go through that now. They get to step on our backs in a very positive way and uplift their organizations based on the experience that we already have and our platform that was built on that experience.
And can you tell me more about that rebranding from Elements to Atlas and what it means for the EOR market in your mind?
Yeah, so when we launched our newest version of our platform, Atlas, we realized that fundamentally we're not the same company we were when we got started. We were very heavily service focused and no technology. Now we're still very service focused. Now we say we are a service enabled tech organization because we know that for scalability and self-service, you need to have that ability. You need to have a really solid platform to be able to manage global operations, global people operations. But we still have a service component of that. Companies are going to need the HR service, the legal services that we do provide. So we wanted to really focus on, the overall change in who we were becoming. Our brand Atlas, you probably see the 3 dots at the top of our logo. Yeah. That stands for our worksite employees, our clients, and our internal employees. And the thick text of our logo is Atlas. It's the Greek mythology of the god that holds up the world. So we have a strong foundation. And we're holding up the 3 pillars, the most important things for us, which is our clients, our worksite employees, and our internal employees.
Love that. And I also invited you on the podcast today to share some of your insights in the whole HR space. And as we all embrace the ability to work from anywhere and on any device at any time, and the global economy continues to evolve, I'm curious, how do you think businesses and employees have to evolve and adapt to change that future of work? Because there's no going back to that old way, is there?
No, I think when we're looking at the overall kind of sense of where the work world is going these days, it's very employee focused. Yeah. The work from home, COVID taught us one thing, that employers can still grow and operate their businesses with employees working remotely. And actually, studies show that more work is getting done with employees working from home than when they were in the office. And so businesses have been successful from that perspective. Now, because of that, it's created a war on talent. We've all heard that terminology before, but that war on talent is the component where employers are now competing for the best talent. So now you're no longer able to compete with the talent that's in your zip code or your postal code. You have to compete with talent that's national or international. And because of that, you need more flexibility. You need flexibility to say, you know what, I need the best developer, and that best developer may be in London, or that best developer may be in China or in India. And if you don't have an entity in those countries, you don't really get the ability to do that. You either do it 2 different ways. You do it non-compliantly, which means you may set them up as a contractor, or you may do it where you set up an entity, but then you have the ability of losing that particular talent because of time it takes to set up an entity in a given country. So with our services that we're able to say within our platform, you can onboard employees a lot faster. So that flexibility is really important. And if you really want to be a really solid employer or employer that's navigating the waters of, the Great Resignation or the war on talent, you need to have the tool belt to be able to say, I can onboard talent as fast as possible anywhere in the world. Taking that talent pool from, the thousands to the billions really gives that employer a lot more flexibility to really arm themselves to be successful in the world.
And I'm glad you brought this up, because I was reading only yesterday that we're heading towards a shortfall of 3 million people qualified for the cybersecurity roles that are going to be needed. So do you have any insights on addressing the critical tech skills gap? Because I mentioned cybersecurity there, but obviously that's just one area. There's just millions of people that are going to be needed to either reskill or switch to a career in technology. So how do we start in addressing that?
Well, I think part of it's also some of the tools that you're enabling your teams with. I really don't believe in mass terminations. I don't really believe in, just hiring new talent and then not looking at where, how you reskill your internal talent. A lot of employers are, as we automate a lot of things, employers have to figure out how we can reskill that talent. So learning development tools, education assistance are things that I highly recommend employers do. This is something we do with it ourselves. We partner with Coursera internally, and all of our staff get access to that type of platform on a day-to-day basis, just to hone in and improve their skills. And then how they tie that into what, things that they want to learn. And we find that, then we are able to do more promotions or transfers within our departments when maybe certain roles become not as needed as much within the organization. So, looking at how you're investing into your team is going to be really important, creating that foundation. As we've grown as an organization, we've actually had to rethink about that as well. We're an HR organization, and we've decided that we are going to be very focused on our people strategy. And some of the things I just mentioned, like Coursera, but we are constantly looking at how we can make sure the teams have access to the right data, the right tools, the right learning to make sure we're setting ourselves up for a great foundation. Another component of that is hiring. A lot of those reports are based on what's going on in certain countries. So open up your ability to do a lot more flexibility to hire that type of talent that you're looking for that may not be readily in your neighborhood at that time.
And something I've seen happen time and time again, especially in the world of tech, is as soon as somebody gets a particular desirable qualification and they're in high demand, they quickly get snapped up as soon as they put that qualification on LinkedIn or by headhunters. So for existing talent who are in high demand, should employee retention in the tech industry now be a high priority? And how are you seeing businesses approach that?
Yeah, I think, there's a couple of things. I come from the mentality that employees, it's not always about the money.
Yeah.
It's an important factor, and we don't want to forget that, but it's not always about the money. So creating a work environment where employees can, be part of the mission, the vision, they feel like they have a seat at the table, I think it's really important. When you're talking about tech, these are individuals who are creating revolutionary technology, and it's sometimes a one in a lifetime opportunity for those individuals to be able to create something really amazing. And so building a culture that they see that, they're passionate about that. Also look at benchmarking, because you don't want to be undervalued or under a benchmarking scale from a talent perspective. But one thing that we've done is, for our tech talent, we look at wages on a semi-annual basis to make sure that we're relevant, but also making sure that they are really part of the vision and mission. Does that work every single time? No, it doesn't. But does it work? Do we have more success out of that? Yes. And it's just making sure that they have a seat at the table, and that we're constantly looking at them and giving them the tools to be successful.
And we've already talked about the global economy and being able to work from anywhere and on any device at any time. But how can businesses navigate around different salaries depending on where their employees live for the exact same job? And is it wrong to discriminate pay scales based on locations? I appreciate it's a pretty big question here, but I'm curious what you're seeing.
I think you have to be fair. So the person that may live in San Francisco has a different cost of living than the person that may live in New Delhi, India. Yeah. And so what you may pay in San Francisco may be enough to live a decent lifestyle, but that same salary in New Delhi is someone living like a king. And so you have to be fair in your assessments and your benchmarking. I do believe in national or regional salary benchmarking. I think that's fair because it gets the average what's around. National will help with that as well. You have some anomalies, like the person that may live in London, for example, and the person that lives in Edinburgh. There may be a definite cost difference, but trying to make sure you're looking at it on a wider scale, but not a global scale. I don't think that's fair, just because the cost of living is very different in every country.
And as the future of work continues to evolve, what excites you and what excites you about that future and the role that Atlas will play in that too?
Well, I love the flexibility. I love that an employer can now say, you know what, if you want to work in the Bahamas and we'll be able to support you. If you want to work in, work-life balance is better for you and your family in Barcelona, then we'll be able to support you. I think that's a great opportunity for employers to really connect with their employees. Where the downfall of that is that sometimes employees may feel like they're on an island. And so as employers, we have to make sure that they stay connected. They still They still stay part of the vision of the organization, but the flexibility of that I think is great. I think it does open up a lot more opportunity for both employees and employers, because those employers who would never have set up an entity in, for example, in Singapore, may now be able to connect with talent that they never would have had an opportunity to work with before, and vice versa for the employee. That employee who've always wanted to work for a British company or a US company or a Chinese company that would never have set up that entity. Now they have that opportunity to work for that type of employer. And I think that ties into kind of even my viewpoint on diversity. If you are a global organization, you want to be global, you have to feel global, you have to look global, you have diversity of thought, culture, and language. And I think that this gives that flexibility. It also, if you look at the economies over the three big economy events, COVID and 2018, and even what you're seeing today, 2008, not 2018. You can look at the companies that have been the most successful, the ones who were able to ride that wave, have been those companies who have been global. They've gotten through it. They weren't as impacted. And that's because they had a lot more flexibility and talent. They had diversity of thought, and they didn't have all their eggs in one basket in one country. So I think that this is the direction we're going as an employer, from an employee and employer perspective. I think it's the right direction. And I think it's going to set us all up for success in the future.
Yeah, 100% with you there, especially around the importance of diversity of thought now. And also, Rick, I noticed you're the author of a book. Could you tell me more about that and what people can expect from the book?
Yeah. So during COVID, I wanted to take the time to really write down my thoughts. I think every entrepreneur had ups and downs during COVID. And, like everyone else, I was nervous right when everything was happening in March of 2020. And although we as a business have been very successful, we grew 43% during COVID. We still had, I still had my doubts from that perspective. And I felt like, I was talking to a lot of my friends who were CEOs of their businesses and individuals who were looking to start their business. And I realized that there's a lot of advice that I was able to give through just experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so I wanted to write a book about it. The title of the book is called Getting Shit Done, The Millennial CEO. Yeah. But it really is just, how do you buckle down? How do you get through that? And how do you make sure you overcome that? And it's not a self-help book. It's very transparent. It's a very open and transparent book about the journey. I have stories in there where I'm celebrating some of our biggest wins. And then I have stories in there where, I come home, take a shower and chug down a bottle of wine. So you talk about all of it and, just to hopefully inspire people to realize that they can be successful when the world tells them they can't be, or when they have their own doubts, right? One of my sayings I have in the book is, it's okay to have a pity party, but have it for a day and then move on. And, talk through that and just hopefully to inspire people that you can do it and you can be successful, even when it's good and bad and ugly.
Love that. Now, we started the podcast today. You're talking about your origin story, what put you on this path. Now, as we've come full circle, I always like to ask my guests to leave everyone with a personal note of inspiration. So I'm going to ask you, is there a song that has inspired you just enjoy or means something to you that we can add to our Spotify playlist? Is there anything that springs to mind there and a story behind that choice maybe too?
Yeah, so the song that I actually am very inspired by the organization is by Elias, and the title is Revolution. And it really talks about creating a revolution, that it's not easy, it's not something that you can just make happen, but as you wither through the storm, you're creating something absolutely beautiful and absolutely amazing. And I feel like that's been the organization, that's been the story, right? It's not always been easy, but what we've been able to do is change our industry. We've changed what the direct model is in the industry. We've coined the term employer of record, and now everyone uses it. So we're creating a revolution, and it's probably the one song that inspires me the most.
What a great story behind the choice. I'm not familiar with it, but I'm going to add that to our playlist, and I'll be checking that out at the end of our call today. But before I let you go, for anyone listening just wants to dig a little bit deeper on what you're doing at Atlas and any of the topics we talked about today, or even contact your team, what's the best starting point for everything?
Yeah, they can go to our website, and that's atlashxm.com. And again, that's Atlas Henry X-Ray Martin.com.
Well, I've loved chatting with you today, learning more about your story and also the fact that it was you guys that actually coined the phrase direct employer of record business model. I had no idea, so I've learned something there today. But more than anything, just thank you for joining me today.
Oh, it was a pleasure. It was mine.
There is so much talk at the moment about the need for diversity of thought in business, and also the ability to work from anywhere opens up a global market for employment opportunities for anybody to work anywhere in the world. And we are seeing the rise of digital nomads as well. And what I found quite thought-provoking, though, was how we tackle paying different salaries depending on where employees live for the exact same job. It's a huge topic, and I'm interested in what anybody listening here, what they think. So if you, on that particular question or anything we discussed today, how are you dealing with these challenges? Do you have any insights you can share? Is there anything you disagree with what we talked about today? Whatever it is, I want to hear all sides of the story and keep this conversation going. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just @NeilC.Hughes. And I look forward to hearing from you all. But I know what you're thinking. What are we going to talk about tomorrow? We have a different topic every single day, 365 days of the year. Well, I'm going to spin the wheel of fortune to determine what that topic will be. But to find out what it is, for that, I'm going to leave you with a cliffhanger. Come and join me tomorrow and we'll explore another topic together. How does that sound? Whew, glad you said that. So, a big thank you as always for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.